Okay, so I want to welcome everybody to, I think, week 18 of this year's xEssentials. Tonight's an exciting topic. I think it's near and dear to me. As an American, we often think that we're the center of the universe on how these things done and don't really realize that pixels displays probably mostly originated in Australia, or at least, founded, have a big educational presence. Europe, things are done a little bit different. And so I'm interested to see what some of the differences, similarities, and so forth that our friends across the pond have. So James Innes is been doing display for a number of years. I've traded messages with him a long time, and I'm interested to get his perspective on setting a display. So James, you've got the floor. Thanks.
Many thanks. Nice to meet you all. First up, a little forward. I have been doing pixel displays for about 3 or 4 years now. Started off very small, learnt the hard way, buying very, very expensive kit from some very, very expensive suppliers, and then realising there were better ways. My history before that, I used to work in the touring industry doing concert lighting, concert pyrotechnics, stuff like that. So I've always had a background in lighting and power and various other things. So it's been quite an interesting journey for me the past few years, really seeing how far we can push it over here. I don't typically do presentations. I'm very cognizant of this, that the more the slides there are, audience suffering goes up. So I've worked out roughly a safe zone for us to operate in is around 10 slides. And there's a real risk of harm the higher that goes. So we're going to try and do tonight in under 142 slides. So forgive me if that gets a bit long. We're going to cover it like this. It's going to be, we're not going to go into too heavy a detail. I think a lot of the basis you'll understand, and a lot of people, what I'm hoping is people from outside of the US will use this as an education tool, as opposed to just information solely for the US market. So forgive that. You'll notice in here straight away that I've spelt generalizations with an S. We invented the language, so if you can deal with that not being a Z or a Z, that'll be magical. And we'll crack on. When Ed asked me to do this, I tried to work out what the differences were, and I did a lot of research. I started trawling the Facebook groups I'm part of that are unique to the UK. I started going through some databases of controllers and stuff that we'd sold, and looked back over all my communications and friends I've made over here over the past 2-3 years. And it dawned on me that there are actually less than about 150 pixel shows in the UK. France isn't far behind. They've got a number. Germany's growing. The Netherlands has got quite a nice little group. But all in all, we're nowhere near where the US and Australia are. We're nowhere near the same league. It's a massive step difference. You know, you guys are in the tens of thousands. We're in the hundreds. However, that is changing. The pixel displays are gathering traction. You're going to see some video later, and you'll see the kind of crowds that a big display will pull over here. That they are getting a bit stupid. And the other key point that I'd like to really pick up on here is that Christmas lighting has always been a thing over here. I remember as a child, we used to go up to local estates, and people would have their houses caked in blow molds and traditional lights, and it was all very pretty. Halloween, however, has never really had that punch, but it's growing. The whole scene is growing over here. We're taking on some big steps from the US. However, all of that said, there aren't typically any other holidays that the UK or EU light for. We don't have the 4th of July or anything like that. So we're going to have to start cutting our own cloth if we want to expand on that. So moving on, we've got style and design differences. There's one guy who really impresses me, who's in the Bronx. I can't remember his name. He's in the Bronx in New York, and the guy's built a display on a city block with no yard at all, no garden, and I think it's incredible. And he was quite an inspiration to me back on my first display where I didn't have a frontage at all. Typically, we have smaller properties. Our front gardens, our front yards are typically smaller. Obviously, there's going to be some houses over here that are larger, but mostly we have a far smaller square footage than you guys do. We have less space. You guys are spread out over many, many more miles than us. So as such, because we have less frontage, we also have smaller props. I incorporated last year for the first time 48-inch flakes in my display, and I actually had to put them above the house on truss. They're not actually mounted on the house, they're above it. It's the only way I could make it work. Fortunately for us, HOAs are not a thing, so we can be more outlandish, and some of us exploit that more than others, but we don't get generally governed by cities or residents associations or anything like that. But the big one, and this is something I'd really like to point out, and hopefully some of our sequencers over there will take note, the musical difference is big. We have got some very unique British artists that don't generally make it very far out of the US, or generally aren't really liked. And as such, there aren't actually many Brit-focused or EU-focused sequences. So if any of you want to do any sequences and stick them in the shared drive, or if any of the sequence stores want to do it, ping me a message. I'll give you a list, just as long as it's not Cliff Richard, because no, he has to go. I'm going to go backwards first, actually. I forgot to introduce this. The next thing you're about to see is a short video. It's about 2.5 minutes long. It's got 4 or 5 displays in it from the UK. They're the best I could find at the time. There are obviously a lot more than this, but enjoy. So a little taste of what was some of the displays up over here get up to. Of course, there's plenty more. Moving on, we're about to go over some key differences in infrastructure and regulations. Now, this is where the differences really start to come in, and I'm going to use the word mains once, as promised. The UK uses terms such as live, or the word I just used. as opposed to hot or utility power. So sorry for those playing the drinking game, you're only getting one drink out of me. The key thing is that we are effectively at double the voltage and the frequency is different. So when people are buying PSUs over here and they're importing them from China, they're drop shipping them from the US, if they're not sourcing them in country, they will often be configured for 110 volt. And there have been a number of people who have smoked them. So it's something to really consider when you're doing that. The electrical regulations and code are massively different. I've worked in the US a lot, so I'm quite familiar with the electrical code over there. We have got different regulations here. I'm not going to offer advice on that, not without numerous disclaimers. So it's just bearing in mind when if a member of the EU or somebody outside of the US asks for help on a US group, the advice that they get may require some local clarification. I realise that may be common sense, but it has to be noted. CE marking is often joked about, meaning China export, as opposed to the actual safety warning it was designed for. And a lot of Chinese companies are actually using CE marks without actually going through the CE marking process. It costs a fair amount of money to get a product through CE marking, and some of the regulations are quite stringent. I'll actually cover one of the examples of that on a later page where we talk about the difference between LRS power supplies and RSP power supplies. It's quite an important thing. But it's very similar to what you guys have as the UL marking, except UL, I understand, is about during the manufacturing process. CE marking is a little different and covers a lot more bases. We can get CE marks for just about any product you can think of. Health and safety and public liability. I realise that the US is quite a litigious risk environment in terms of people potentially suing for stepping on property, etc., etc. We don't suffer that issue so much out here, but we do need to show due care and due diligence for safety of anybody coming onto our properties or nearby. You know, we have a responsibility. I think we all do morally, but the regulations surrounding it are somewhat different. Building structures, again, massively different. You guys, stucco walls, shingle roofs, wooden structures, wooden structures. They're just not commonplace over here. I would say 99% of the UK is brick or concrete with tiled roofs. This has made mounting things quite entertaining. A lot of the advice and suggestions that are given on US groups and Australian groups don't actually apply. And the brackets that are being made, some of the stuff you guys have got access to just makes me so jealous. Like the ridge clips you guys get are fantastic, but they just won't work here. You know, and there's lots of local groups finding really clever and ingenuitive solutions to that. One of the big things for me that I really, really do want to drive home to people outside the US is that FM transmitters, whilst you can buy them here on Amazon and eBay and other places, they're not actually legally usable in an effective configuration. I'll expand on that. You can buy an FM transmitter to convert your car radio, which may or may not have had a CD player 30 years ago, so you could plug a Walkman into it. And that's called a personal transmitter, and it's got something like a 3-meter range. You can use that, that's fine, but for what we need them for, they're no good. So when people are using a sensible power transmitter to be effective, they're breaking the laws over here. You need a license to use them. Those licenses start in the thousands of pounds. You really do need to find another way if you want to stay all above board. Now, that said, Ofcom and the regulation agencies, they're not the best at enforcement, but God forbid they do, you are in a world of pain. Just food for thought. Key differences in materials. This is always going to be entertaining. We don't have Home Depot. We have Wickes and B&Q in the UK. There are various similar stores throughout the rest of the EU in different names. But certain tools don't align with names. I was going to do a whole glossary of terms for this presentation, but by the time I got halfway through it, I went, "You guys are going to be really bored," and it's where that 142 slide joke at the beginning came from. I think the best thing you can do is assume nothing. If you are using this presentation as a guide, and you're a member of the EU, you're a resident outside of the US, and you're looking for tools, and you're looking at this, join a local group and get local advice when it comes down to actual purchases of tools. It's the easiest thing to do. And some key points on this are PEX pipe in the UK. Everybody went, "Oh, PEX pipe, that's what arches are made of, they're brilliant." And loads of us went out and bought PEX pipe from our various providers over here and found out it's actually barrier pipe, which has got zero light throughput. We're all sitting there with PEX pipe we couldn't actually use. So it's not the same. Don't fall into the trap. Likewise, EMT just doesn't exist here in the same way it does for you. EMT here, it does exist. We call it electrical conduit, or just conduit. You can buy it in plastic, you can buy it in metal. It's not heavy gauge at all. It's got no structural strength whatsoever. It's designed to be clipped to a wall, and you should avoid it like the plague for anything that we want to use it for. Outside of that, gas barrel is more similar to what you classify as EMT, but it's a lot more expensive, it's a lot heavier, and it rusts really, really nicely. It's not made out of galv. And the last one, and this is something quite unique to the UK, the EU is fully metric. If you go to anybody in France and say to them, "How long is this? How long is that?" you can guarantee you're going to get a response in centimeters, or meters or millimeters. But in the UK, depending on the age of the person you ask, you could get an answer in the imperial system or the metric system. There's a generation in the UK, I don't know whether it applies in the US, called Generation X. I'm the last of Generation X, my age group, where we're ambidextrous. We were taught in schools the metric system, and our parents used the imperial system. So I will often say to people, "Yeah, it's 8 foot long and 1200 mil wide," which can be confusing for some people. But bear in mind, when you're buying strips and you're buying models, you're looking in inches typically, because that's what most of the stuff is manufactured in. Key differences in supplies of goods. Now, I've actually done this in 2 slides. One about the differences in the actual products, and one on how we acquire them. I did try to condense this to 1 slide, but it started getting a bit crazy out there. There are some pixel-based vendors similar to the numerous companies out in the US, in the EU. There's 3 or 4 of them, and it's not the same world. It's not a competitive marketplace, but there are lots of commercial companies selling architectural installation type affairs, which, to be honest with you, don't really translate very well. Likewise, there are no Coro shops, no actual Coro manufacturers or Coro cutters in the EU. And much to our pain, we have discovered that importing Coro into the UK and the EU is ridiculously expensive. You're shipping air. It's volumetric weight. So if something costs $10, by the time it's landed here, after we've paid shipping, duty, VAT, it's going to be about 13 or 14 pounds. And the exchange rate at the moment is $1.25 to the pound, just to give you the idea. Okay. Why hasn't it happened over here? Well, Coro over here is also about 50 or 60% more expensive to buy as a raw material than in the US. Over here, we have to have, see the CE marking conversation earlier. You don't buy CE marked Coro, but the regulations surrounding all materials are crazy. We have to have dolphin friendly, low smoke if it catches fire. It's got to kiss babies and various other things to even be sold over here. As a consequence, the production costs are higher. So either way, it's going to end up costing more money. PSUs, I mentioned this earlier, the main differences between CE marked and non-CE marked equipment. The LRS PSU is a go-to PSU in the USA. Over here, they are requirable. You can get them, but you have to provide evidence that you're a commercial business, and that can be done by VAT or business tax registration number, etc. And they're designed for integration only. So they're designed to be sold to companies who are going to build them into enclosures and then CE certify the whole commodity, the whole product, which nobody wants to do. So over here, we have to buy the RSP PSU. Now, there's nothing stopping me as an individual importing an LRS and using it, but if my house catches fire and the insurance company wants to be pedantic about it, they could look into what I was using. Difference is the RSP is about 30 watts lower in output. It has a power factor correction circuit on it, which reduces electrical noise, amongst other things. It makes it more efficient, and it makes all the people at the CE marking office in Brussels really, really happy to know that they've added lots of red tape for no benefit whatsoever. It is a pointless thing. Here's the best thing: it's 30% more expensive. There is one advantage to it. When you turn an RSP off, it has a relay output, i.e. when you turn it off, it switches off, it doesn't fade out. So there is a little upside to it, but not 30% more expensive worth it. Lastly, enclosures, we have to get inventive. We have to make our own, or we have to import them. Bud boxes, there's no distributor over here. CG 1500s, there's no manufacturer over here. Ammo crates, we don't have the same fascination or availability of guns that you guys have. So we don't get those ones either. So you'll see lots of interesting photos of people using large storage boxes and silicon gel packs and various other things to make them work. It's quite inventive. Well worth a look. This is the real fun one. I know you guys think you've got a pretty poor deal with importing stuff at the moment, but we get it bad all the time. So I've done a little equation here for you. It doesn't matter where you're importing from. Outside the EU, this is how it works. You get the goods value, you add the shipping to it, and then you pay duty on that. Now, the duty can vary between 2 and 10%, depending, well, it can be 0, but none of the things we buy are 0. Typically, we'll pay about 6 or 7% for the things we buy. And then once that's all added together, we then pay 20% on top of all of that. So basically, you're looking at approximately 26% on top, including the shipping value. This can get really, really expensive. Now, you can under-declare, no dispute. There are ways that can be done, and some of the Chinese providers are offering this deliver duty paid option where you think you're getting a blinding deal, but I have actually purchased some stuff from China on deliver duty paid and then received an invoice about 6 weeks later from the courier saying, by the way, we had to pay this on your behalf as a difference. So it's never 100% guaranteed. And I think it's going to get more and more common. The UK is leaving the EU. Well, it has left the EU officially, but the trading bloc ends on the 21st of December. And I think it's going to get even tighter and more difficult as a consequence. But nobody actually knows what's going to happen there. A lot of people are looking at using shipping agents. They're okay. It's how I initially started. I bought my first F-16 over under using a shipping agent, and whilst I was rubbing my hands together because I got $1.31 to the pound at the time, I only paid 170 pounds or so for my first F-16. Then I paid Shipitu $3 membership, and then I paid another $3 to remove the paperwork. Then I paid $45 to ship it across the pond, and then the government got their hands on it and decided that they'd look on Pixel Controller's website, find out it was worth $200, and I ended up paying £235 as a consequence in total. So they look good, but don't be caught in the trap to think that you're always going to win. It's not necessarily the way. Just be prepared. It can be more expensive, and it often will be more expensive than you think. So on that note, groups and resources in the region. Facebook groups, obviously, it's the place to be nowadays. for communities and support. I'm not going to talk through each of these individually. It's a reference point for future users to look at. I've put a little summary of each one in there, but the top two in the UK are very good for pixel displays. The bottom one, there's a bit in there, but it's more traditional than anything else. I did poll as many people as I knew across the EU to find out what Facebook groups they use, and these are the only two that replied. I hope there's more. I really do, and if there are, please let me know. I'll update the presentation and share it with Ed. But as it sits, that's all I've got for those. Local resources in the region for shops, Build a Light Show, Panels Are Us, Smart Show. Smart Show is an interesting company. They sell these small controllers. They are very, very expensive they're not very, very expensive. That's not fair. They're expensive in terms that they're UK built, distributed. They're very, very small, very, very compact, very, very cool bits of kit. Panels Are Us are selling panels and all the associated hardware. Build a Light Show has got is the Falcon distributor for the region and sell all the associated bits with that. Other shops outside of the UK, I'm aware that xMsland exists. I don't know how big or small they are. I've not had any interactions with them, but I know they're there, and I know people have been buying from them. There's a company in Denmark that's nearly finished their first hobby store, and they're a commercial company. They actually do a lot of shopping malls and fairgrounds and big things like that, but they've realised that there is a growing market, so they're opening up a hobby web store. And I've been told, as of I think it was on Tuesday, there is a store starting up in France, which is really good as well. That's going to be very good for the EU. So it's growing. I think I've covered everything, and I've only gone on for 27 minutes, which isn't bad. So hopefully I haven't bored everybody.
Okay, great. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to put this together, and especially with the time difference, able to present. Definitely learned quite a bit. So